With the 15th pick and with the 26th pick in the 2019 NFL Draft, the Washington Redskins select Dwayne Haskins, Montez Sweat.
Welcome, all my fellow Redskin brethren and sister. I am your man and resident Redskins fan, Lou. Thank you for joining me here on the Redskins Report. Dressed in all black like the Omen, man. You know what that means. Today is cut day. And for those NFL players getting the axe, man, it's dark. And today is hella hot. So I'm dressed in all black to mourn their losses today. All right. And you know, it's bittersweet today. And let me first start with a double O. All right. Okay. I was wrong. The Redskins decided to move on from Josh Doctson. I didn't think it was going to happen. But generally, and I know the rules to the game, and I just elected not to play, and that's what I get. When teams put out there that they're looking to move a guy, generally speaking, that means we're either going to trade you, and if we don't find a trade partner, we're going to release you. That's how that narrative usually goes 99.9% of the time. So I already knew in my mind that if Josh Doctson wasn't traded, he probably was going to be cut. But I didn't want to believe it because we don't usually do the sensible thing. We usually do the other thing. Like trade Trent Williams. That would be the sensible thing. We're going to do the other thing. We'll see what happens with that situation. However, the Redskins reportedly are moving on from Josh Doctson. Now, it's not official yet, but that is the word out on the street. And that word out on the street is probably going to prove true. So we're just going to go with the premise that Josh Doctson is not going to be on this roster for 2019, which means there's an extra roster spot available at the receiver position. Now, for some of you out there, Josh Doctson was never occupying a roster spot, so nothing has changed with the way you view the wide receiver position. For me, I had Doctson as one of my 6, not because I thought he deserved to be here, but because I thought that's what the Redskins were going to do. Now, if you ask me who should take his place, I'm going to tell you it should be Steven Sims. Now, that's just me because I think this guy can help in the slot. I think this, and again, Trey Quinn has not proven to be healthy, so we need a backup slot. But more importantly, probably more so than what he can bring to the team from an offensive standpoint, because Jay said he doesn't think he's ready from that standpoint. The man can step in right now and help us on special teams, where we probably need it the most. And as a return man on kickoffs and punt returns, we could definitely use a pick-me-up. We haven't had a difference maker back there since probably Brandon Banks, to be realistic. And even Brandon Banks was hit or miss. A lot of times he was losing yards trying to make plays, but Steven Sims looks to be the real deal. It looks to be legit. And I'm excited to see this guy get an opportunity. And I think he can actually help at receiver too, down the line. So in any event, that's who I would supplement onto the roster with the loss of Josh Doctson. And let's take a look at Josh Doctson and reflect on another missed early pick for the Redskins. You can't afford, if you want to be a good football team, you can't miss on first, second rounders. Really, you don't want to miss on third rounders either, but third rounders are hit and miss. First and second rounders, you got to be knocking those out of the ballpark consistently. You're not going to hit on all of them, all right? That's how this thing goes, is an inexact science. However, you've got to hit on your first and second rounders. The Redskins have been habitual offenders in terms of not hitting on second rounders. I've already gone through the gamut and the full list of all of the second rounders that have failed here. And I think we got another one on the roster in Ryan Anderson, but I'm not going to give up on him yet. But you already know how I feel about Ryan Anderson. So you can add him to the list probably in a year or two from now when we're moving on from him as well. But Josh Doctson, I thought he was going to be good. I'm not going to sit here and act like I never wanted Josh Doctson. I thought he was going to be good. When we drafted him in the first round, he was my favorite receiver in that year's draft, and I was flat out wrong. Okay. I admit I was wrong, all right? Another double O, and I don't give out usually 2 double O's in one day, all right? But I was wrong about Josh Doctson then, and I'm wrong about him now because I thought he was going to be on the roster. I'm glad they moved on from him because what you have to do when you try to dig yourself out of a hole that you put yourself in is you have to admit that you made a mistake. We probably could have admitted this mistake a couple of years ago, but you wanted to give him a chance because he wasn't the healthiest early on in his career. And you thought maybe the light could come on at the end of his career and you could end of that rookie contract, and you could start to see some of the, some of the fruits of your labor, so to speak, and maybe reap a little bit of dividends from what you invested in him in the first round pick. But that never came to be here in DC. And so Redskins cut bait, got a lot of young receivers they like. And you got to move on. You got to do what's smart here, and they're doing that by moving on from Josh Doctson. How about Semaj Ryan? Remember, I talked about him as a guy that, man, he could carry his ass. I talked about him on my 5 biggest takeaways from Thursday night's game, and how I said, honestly speaking, the 4th running back isn't on the Redskins roster now. I hope they don't think that Semaj Ryan's not the answer and Byron Marshall is, because, Jay has this infatuation with these damn backs on his roster. And it's going all the way back to Rob Kelly and some of these other guys that he would always love. I think it might have even started with Mac first. But he would never get on the field in an NFL game, in an actual regular season game. But in any event, I'm glad to see, and this is another report, nothing's been confirmed, but reported, Craig Hoffman said that the Redskins are moving on from Semaj Ryan. I'm excited to hear that. Not excited for Semaj. It sucks because, again, and I didn't think Semaj was great, so I'm not going to give out a 00 for this. But I thought he would be better than what he was. I thought he was a good quality back. I wasn't moved by the pick, though. I thought it was too early for him. First of all, I felt the same way about that pick as I did the Matt Jones. Matt Jones pick a couple years prior to that, where I was like, we took a guy that is potentially going to be good, but I don't ever see him being great. I don't see why we spent such an early pick on this player. 3rd round for Matt Jones. Matt Jones. And a 4th rounder for Semaj Ryan. Both of them did not work out here in DC. Both had fumbling issues and both failed to really capitalize on opportunities that were given to them countless times in DC to establish themselves as a quality NFL running back. Matt Jones is no longer in the league. Semaj Ryan is going to get an opportunity elsewhere, but if he plays like he did here elsewhere, he won't be in the league for much longer either. So they did the right thing. Jay finally did the right thing here. Now the question is he going to do the next right thing, which is say bye-bye to Byron Marshall as well? Or is he going to say Byron Marshall is a better backup to Chris Thompson than Semaj Ryan was, and so we're going to keep Marshall? And Marshall actually hasn't been that bad in the preseason, but I'm good on Byron Marshall. Again, I don't know about you. I don't want to speak for you. I'm good on Byron Marshall. I'll pass. Thank you, but no thanks. All right? I'll pass on Byron Marshall. So I've said that already, so I don't need to really rehash that again, but we'll see what the Redskins decide to do. Also, J.P. Holtz is also has been released. That's been reported. So again, I never thought he was going to make the roster, but there were a lot of rumblings and grumblings, and I introduced the dilemma that the Redskins could be under with Jordan Reed potentially under the protocol, the concussion protocol, and not knowing what his situation was. We still haven't heard any news. They've been really hush on Jordan Reed. They haven't said anything else. It's amazing. There was 2 different reports. There were 2 different forms of reporting when it came to concussions the last 2 weeks. So last week, when Jordan Reed got hit, he was in concussion protocol. All right, that's the wording they use. Concussion protocol. Started to have symptoms. He's in the protocol. We never heard if he actually had a concussion or not. Meanwhile, Casanova McKenzie gets hit, and automatically he's got a concussion. All right. So there's 2 different ways you can look at this thing. Redskins are either hiding something from us or Jordan Reed's fine. I haven't heard that he's fine. I just think they said we're just going to keep it at protocol so that we give ourselves some wiggle room with this whole situation. But bottom line is, I never thought they were going to keep an additional tight end because I thought the 2.5 weeks that we had between when Jordan Reed sustained the concussion and again, as I mentioned before, you can never tell with these concussions. There is no set time frame for when one comes and goes. But I was going out on a limb and saying, even though that was a vicious shot, that 2.5 weeks would be enough time for him to recuperate and be ready for week 1. And I didn't think they would make any drastic moves on the roster due to that concussion. Now with Casanova McKenzie, I think it's a little different. They may have to do something drastic, like keep a 5th outside linebacker, which, again, that guy doesn't exist on this roster right now as we speak. That guy isn't here. But they may have to keep one of those guys that were here, like Marcus Smith, for instance. He's probably the next guy in line to be kept. But, again, not impressive to me. Don't want him on the football team. So, and maybe that's why they had to move on from a Semaj Ryan. Because they have to keep a 5th edge rusher, they had to cut bait elsewhere. And I told you that was going to happen. That was going to be a trickle-down effect. Maybe that's why Semaj Ryan is no longer here. And they only are going to go with 3 backs, which is perfectly fine by me if all of them stay healthy. But, again, we will see. Let me check my mobile device real quick before I get out of here, just to make sure that nothing else has happened since I jumped on here and I missed anything. But doesn't seem like anything else has happened. And so Semaj Ryan, gone. JP Holtz, gone. And the biggest bombshell of the day, Josh Doctson, gone, which means the Redskins, I think they're still going to keep 6, which means that opens up a spot for someone. I know a lot of you, I've seen this a number of times. I've seen it Trey Quinn, Paul Richardson, Terry McLaurin, Cam Sims, Steven Sims, and I've also seen it the same 4, no Cam Sims, but rather Steven Sims and Robert Davis. Now, a lot of people keep leaving Kelvin Harmon out of this equation. I do not think the Redskins are going to cut him. Now, that would be a shock to me. Even though, if you're asking me, and I get it, and I understand why you guys are doing what you're doing, if you're just going off of preseason play, then Kelvin Harmon doesn't deserve to be on this roster. I get it. He has not done anything that warrants him staying. However, the Redskins are projecting here. He was a 6th-round pick. They're giving him some time to develop. They don't want to expose him to waivers because they don't know if they're going to get him back. And so they want to hold on to a guy that they spent a draft pick on. I know a lot of you don't necessarily believe in that, and you want the best players on the roster, and I get it. I totally understand that, but there also is something to be said for developing draft picks, homegrown product, guys that you spent selections on. And I haven't been there during the OTAs and the offseason minis and into training camp. And I've heard he's looked great throughout that entire process. We just haven't seen it on the field. Some of that due to the quarterback, some of that due to the offensive line. Whatever the case may be, I think they're keeping Kelvin Harmon. All right, so I think that you're looking at one spot for 2 players, and those 2 guys, I'm not a Darvin Kidsey guy. Let me reiterate that again. Darvin Kidsey, for me, not making this roster. I could be wrong. And if I'm wrong, I will give out another 00 for that. Because I don't think Darvin Kidsey is making this football team. However, I will tell you this. I think there's one spot for 2 guys. And I've already told you that I thought it was 2 spots for 3 guys. And now that one of those guys looks like he's going to be on this football team, I think now you're looking at a situation where it's 1 spot, 2 players. And those 2 players for me, and now Cam Sims is another guy you got to think about. The Redskins may try to sneak him on the IR with the finger injury. Just something that I threw that out there during my 5 biggest takeaways from the game, but I just want to throw that out there again. But if Cam Sims is on the roster, then it's 1 spot for 2 guys, Robert Davis, Steven Sims Jr. So that's how it's going to go. I think one of those 2 is going to make the roster. I think Cam Sims is there. If Sims is gone on IR and they designate him on IR with the injury, then I think it's room for both of those guys. But Kelvin Harmon, to me, is on the roster. So the way I see it, it's Kelvin, it's Terry McLaurin, it's Trey Quinn, it's Paul Richardson, it's Kelvin Harmon, Steven Sims for me, and Cam Sims. Those are my 6. I don't think Robert Davis is a guy that makes this football team. However, if they decide to put Cam Sims on IR, Robert Davis is the guy that benefits from that the most and is now elevated to the 53-man roster. So if anything major happens, I'll be back. If nothing else happens, We'll talk about this at a later date in time. But you know, I always got y'all covered. Of course, I am a Redskins fan, etched in burgundy and gold. My Redskins spirit will never die. Redskins spirit will never fold until we meet again. Hail to our beloved Washington Redskins. I'm going to check my mobile device one final time just to make sure that nothing else has happened. And make sure that that the Redskins haven't done anything else. And then we're going to get out of here, man, because it's been a crazy day thus far, and it's going to get crazy. It looks like the Cowboys and Zeke Elliott are going to find a way. And look, I was hoping that they would find a way to reach, because he's not going anywhere. I told you this all along. If you've been listening to the podcast, he's going to stay in Dallas. Jerry Jones isn't stupid. You call Jerry a lot of things he's not dumb. All right? He's a lot of things. He's brash. He's very, very annoying. He's flamboyant. You say what you want about Jerry, all right? Overbearing. He's a know-it-all. He's a smart-ass. All of those things apply. You can't call Jerry Jones dumb. That's one thing you can't do. And he's not going to let good football players walk. He generally doesn't. So I said they're going to figure this out. I was just hoping they figured it out after week 2. I'm not saying. I'm just saying. But it looks like they're going to figure it out before week 1. And we're going to have to deal with Zeke Elliott in week number 2. But we got the defensive line to deal with him like we did in D.C. last year. Let's hope we have the same results we had in D.C. last season. In any event, I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. Until next time, you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend. College football, man. Get you some. If something happens, I shall return. I promise. See you guys later.
Louie T Network.